Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, free webinar, which is entitled Building Intelligent Automation Teams, hosted by myself, Damien Spears from Heat Recruitment, and our guest speaker is Denis Dennehy, who is with us today from FD Intelligence. Just a bit about myself. I run the RPA and automation team here at Heat Recruitment, and I will pass over to Denis, and he will introduce himself and take us through this this webinar that he's put together. Thank you, Denis.
Thanks, Damien. Yeah, I'll share my screen and we can click on. I'll start by saying, yeah, I'm Chief Operating Officer at FD Intelligence. We're an RPA intelligent automation firm, specialising mostly in accountancy and hospitality sectors. But I've been in the RPA world for 18 years now. I'll share my screen and we'll go through the presentation. So hopefully you can see that. So today I'm going to discuss for you how to build intelligent automation teams. Exactly what we're going through is a bit of a recap on the last webinar. So it's I think it's September, Damien, when we did the last one. So time flies. So I'll give a bit of a recap on some of the main points on that one. I'm going to talk about the different organizational models that I've seen in different companies where they've got RPA teams or intelligent automation teams set up differently. Going to discuss the different roles you need as you grow your intelligent automation team. And then I'm going to discuss where to find training and how to get upskilled in this technology. So first, a quick recap on the last webinar, just in case you've not seen it or because it was a while ago, in case you might have forgotten it. So four main things I've drawn from the last webinar we did. The first point was that intelligent automation is as vital today as it's ever been because there's a workforce crisis. And I discussed that accountancy and hospitality sectors have massive problems recruiting people and retaining people in the more basic data entry type of roles, especially. I also discussed as a main point that productivity has remained low since pre-COVID. In the UK, especially, wages have gone up substantially, but productivity is flatlined, and that means it's costing businesses more and more money just to stay treading water and stay where they were. So productivity is a real issue. And they're the main reasons that I discussed in terms of the need for doing intelligent automation. I'll add another one just for this call. And I'd say the other one is AI. So AI at the moment is obviously booming. We've got large language models. They can open up a lot of potential for these intelligent automation robots. I think the two working together is pretty much going to be the future. So we should be in a bit of a boom time for intelligent automation off the back of the IA buzz that's out there. The next thing I mentioned was exactly what robotic process automation was, just in case there's anyone listening that doesn't know. I talked about the RPA robot doing the swivel chair data entry. I talked about computer vision technology, allowing these robots to see and read from documents and screens. I discussed AI, allowing the robots to think and do more, maybe to get information out of unstructured text and things like that. I also mentioned last webinar how to get started, and I gave a couple of tips. And the main one was start with the easy stuff, don't start with the hard stuff. So if you're starting an RPA, find some low-hanging fruit, really easy to automate simple processes to start with and learn your lessons from. And the other big lesson that I'm going to pull out from the last time is include your people. One of the biggest risks of this kind of automation technology is that people are scared of it. So get your people involved, get them involved in finding automation for the robots to do, have competitions to name the robot, that kind of thing. So that was a whistle-stop recap of the last webinar. I think we'll send it out again at last webinar when we send out details on this one, just so you can find it as well. So this one, we're going into how to build an RPA team. I'm going to start by saying that it's a journey, not a sprint. The reason I'm showing this slide is when I looked at the slides I prepared for this presentation, I noticed that there's loads of roles I'm going to talk about, and there's loads of different operating models I'm going to talk about. The reality is most people start small and you evolve into roles and you evolve your operational model. So almost everyone starts with just a couple of developers, maybe reporting into an existing manager, and they kind of automate some stuff because they want to try this RPA thing. And that's how most people start. So when I talk about the next slides about all these operational models, I know that it will be a journey to get there. So most people start out with a couple of developers. If that's successful, they'll grow a team doing RPA. And if that's successful, that team will grow. And that tends to be the real reality. So don't worry if what I talk about on the following slides sounds scary. I know it will be an evolution to get there. So these are the different types of organizational model I've seen with intelligent automation in all the companies I've looked at. So there's a number of them. I'm going to go into a bit more detail on a few of them. The one thing I'm going to say on this slide is every company is different. What works in one company doesn't necessarily work in another. And also, I've known most companies to adapt and change their model over time. So, for example, I've got Centre of Excellence there, which I'm going to talk on the next slide. That's probably the most common structure where companies, sets up one central team. But I've known Centre of Excellence is to expand and federate out into multiple teams. I've also known multiple teams to become a Centre of Excellence team. So the one thing I want to say on this slide is you will evolve into a model that works for you, but don't expect one thing to work for all. So, I've heard a lot of conversations about, I know one retailer, one RPA vendor's website, it kind of says set up a Centre of Excellence and you're done, but that won't work for every organization. So I'm going to dive into a few of these now. So like I said, the most common one is a Centre of Excellence. So that is a central team. Usually a company will get started and they'll hire a developer and they'll have a manager. And they'll automate something as almost a showcase, and then they'll grow the team, maybe bring in business analysts and other roles that we'll talk about in a bit. The benefit of a Centre of Excellence is it's easy to manage. You've got all your automation people in one place. It's easy to find funding for one place and raise business cases for one place. It's quite a simple model. And it can expand fairly organically as well. So I know one European bank, they've got a Centre of Excellence with 40 to 50 people. They started out with quite a small team, and they're doing intelligent automation work for the entire bank. So that can work. The one negative of a Centre of Excellence can be that it'll end up being a bottleneck. So if it's a very big organization, especially, that Centre of Excellence will end up being a bit of a problem because they can never grow fast enough. And that's where some kind of federated or franchise model can work really well. And that's where the second column is here, kind of a business automation hubs. This is where you have multiple teams around a larger company all doing intelligent automation. The benefit of that is you can do more and you ingrain intelligent automation experts into the business where they can really understand the local departments. And that really helps to do more and to bring, also helps to bring people on side with what you're doing as well. Where it doesn't work is if these multiple teams are all working in different ways. What I've seen at some companies is they federate very early, might even have started out in a federated or franchised multiple hub model before they had a Centre of Excellence. And some of these teams are doing really well and some of them are doing really badly. So what I'd say is if you're having this kind of franchised, federated, hub and spoke model, whatever you want to call it, you still need some kind of overarching governance, overarching quality control, ideally someone that owns automation across the company. And that will really help, A, getting good governance and quality in place, and B, having some kind of leader to push automation centrally will help you grow as well. The final one on this slide is systems developer, and I put that in. It's a bit of a love-hate thing for me, the idea or a concept of a systems developer. But basically, a systems developer is you kind of franchise out even more so that everyone in your company can do intelligent automation or RPA. Everyone's got some kind of RPA functionality installed on their desktops that they can use. And that's happening more and more in terms of UI path and automation anywhere, are definitely selling those kind of models. And obviously with Microsoft and Power Automate and Power Apps, you know, sometimes your office install in your company will come with some kind of automation technology built in. I would say the risk of this is that you are enabling people everywhere in your company to almost build something, don't test it very well and run it, and maybe cause some big issues in your organization. So I would say be careful with it. Ideally, you'll be really, at a granular level, you'll really control what people can do in some way. And it might be that you kind of come with, you know, really good training for your people in terms of what's right and what's wrong for them to automate and what should the Centre of Excellence automate. At its core, even when you create an email rule in Outlook, you're effectively creating an automation. So it can be done quite easily and quite safely. Just be careful in terms of the power you give people if it's not monitored. The next slide is an outsourced managed service. So this is different to the previous three you saw, because this is where a third-party partner or service organization does all the automation for you. This obviously is my favorite model, simply because it's what FT Intelligence does a lot of. It might not be your favorite model, but it works for me. The benefit of this is in smaller companies especially, it can be difficult to get the funding to set up a full team doing RPA and all the roles you need. So having a partner do it all for you takes away that building a team expense and risk, and it allows you to get started quickly is the other thing. If a company like FT Intelligence or another partner, there are other partners out there, if a company like us comes in and just builds some quick win automations for you, it allows you to get started really quickly. It allows you to learn what good looks like, whilst you maybe think about whether you're going to build a team or not. So get started quick. And also, you know, it's a model that can really work in terms of finding the good business cases for you. You know, we as service providers, we inject real knowledge into your company in terms of where to look, what is a good automation, maybe how to change your business processes. So it's a model that can work. The negatives is obviously we're not cheap, and that's obviously the balance in terms of, you know, your Centre of Excellence is difficult to set up and expensive to set up, but the third-party organisation doing it all for you can eventually become quite expensive. The final model I'm going to talk about is a hybrid. So it's where you have a partner doing some work for you, and you have your own Centre of Excellence doing automation work as well. So all the business areas you see here, all the processes that could be automated are going to a funnel, and you've got a partner working closely with your Centre of Excellence. For me, it's the best of both worlds because the service partner will inject the experience and knowledge to help you set up your Centre of Excellence team, and also they're also there to bring in new ideas, new technologies, because, you know, our life is knowing this technology and knowing the intelligent automation world. So a good partner will keep bringing new technologies and new ideas. And also the partner, even when you've got a mature Centre of Excellence, can act as a burst capacity of more resource. Because like I said, one of the negatives or one of the problems you can have with the Centre of Excellence is there might be too much work for them to do. And I know from experiences of some banking customers, organisations I know, they still have a partner. They've had the same partner for many years, and they bring them in to work on some projects where they need capacity. So this kind of hybrid approach, you've kind of got the best of both worlds in my view. So they're the main models you'll see. So next is, what roles do you have in these Centre of Excellence or in these models? So let's move on and have a look at that. So I said at the start, this is an evolution, not a sprint. So don't be worried about that. I've just put a slide up with loads and loads of different roles. I know most teams will start out with 1 or 2 developers. But all these roles are the roles you need to think about having. And it might not be in the RPA team itself that you find these roles. It might be elsewhere in your company. You might get a business analyst or project manager from another team to second, or yeah, there's different ways of working it, but these are the roles you certainly need. So head of automation, this is the manager that leads the automation initiative in your company. It's important to have someone owning it and someone driving it. And the best heads of automation used to be called head of RPA that I've seen are really outgoing people that can really get things done, really push past blockers. I'm thinking of a few banks I know where the head of automation, if it wasn't for them, RPA wouldn't have been a success. But they're really really great collaborators, really good promotion as well. So that can be a really important role if you're going to grow and succeed. RPA project manager. This can be a project manager from elsewhere in your organization that comes and does some RPA project management for you. The real problems with RPA projects can happen if you don't manage change well, if you don't manage scope well, and it's some issues we fixed ourselves at FT Intelligence, and that's why we set up our own project management team, because RPA is as much a change project as anything else. So good project management is really important. Things like the 80-20 rule, where you don't automate everything in the process, but you can automate quite quickly, is really important, and a good project manager will get that. Business analysts are key as well. So RPA business analyst, these people will go out into your business. They'll do two main things usually. They'll help you build your pipeline of processes to be automated. So they'll have some kind of methodology or a scoring spreadsheet or some kind of online tool that they'll use, and they'll go around the business asking questions about your business processes to find the right business processes to automate and to build that backlog of work to be automated. The second main thing an RPA business analyst will do is they'll do your process documentation. So doing an intelligent automation project is a lot like outsourcing. You need to know the business process at a keystroke level. So the business analyst will do that work of documenting the business process, agreeing with the business process owner that that documentation is correct, and then it can be automated. Fourth one here is the obvious one, RPA developers. To be able to build automations, you need someone to build them. Like I said, I'd say if you're growing a new team, the first RPA developer ideally should be a very experienced one, someone that's done it before, because that first RPA developer will probably end up being the business analyst, the project manager, the controller, which I'll come on to next, and have multiple hats on. So someone with experience is probably good at important as your first person, and also someone that would be a good mentor. So when you're interviewing your first RPA developer, see if they've trained up people before in intelligent automation. See if they like mentoring people, because this first RPA developer is effectively going to help you build your team. Solution architects, senior developers, they're just an extension of those RPA developers, and they're different names you'll hear. So if you're looking at RPA roles on the market, which Damien might be able to tell you more about later, RPA developer, solution architect, senior developer, they're the kind of different roles that you'll hear, and it's all about seniority effectively. And you'll probably hear junior RPA developer or trainee RPA developer. So there's probably 5 or different levels of developer out there, but getting a good one first is the important thing as you build your team, and then you can start training people. Controller or support role. So this is a role where once you've built all these automations, someone needs to run them. And when you first start out, probably your RPA developer will also run those automations for you and make change to them and fix them if there's problems. But as you grow, 2 things happen. One, it's a big waste of time. If you've got this expensive RPA developer, doing great work, automating processes with a quick ROI, great business value, it's crazy to waste their time, these expensive resources, doing the controller piece, because that can be quite a junior role. So one really important reason to get a controller in to run the robots and to monitor the robots is it'll free up your expensive developers. The second thing is a logical access model. So most organizations, if you talk to someone in IT and say we're developing something, and then the person that develops it is then going to just run it, and they're going to have access to your live systems, and they're going to be able to kind of make changes in live and all that kind of thing. If you start talking like that, you'll be shut down. So getting a controller in, some junior person to run the automations quite early, probably is quite important to keep that logical access model where your developers develop, but then your controller is the person that moves into production, monitors it in production. Final two, intelligent automation roles. So we're in a new world now where there's loads of technologies. And a problem I found quite early in my previous job at Blue Prism was there was an expectation that my RPA developers also knew about AI, they knew about reporting and databases, they knew about document understanding, they knew about task capture tools. There was a high expectation of them to know everything, whereas the reality is, A, they didn't have the capacity because they were delivering automations in the RPA tool, but B, there's only so much you can be a real deep expert in. If you spread people too thin, they'll be they'll know everything, but they'll be a master of none, if you like. So as you grow your team, you'll end up probably having to recruit some people where part of their role will be to know about the additional intelligent automation kind of technologies. FT Intelligence, we've got two AI specialists, we've got an MI specialist, we've got a couple of other developers that are, have done document understanding projects for us. So you end up splitting the team, and that makes more sense in terms of getting people to have that deep knowledge. The final one I've got here is an operating or success architect. So this is someone like myself with a lot of experience of setting up RPA teams. They'll help you find the right model. It's more of a consultative role. And if you look on the websites of UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, they'll have some kind of robotic operation model, automation operating model. They'll have that kind of expert training. And it's all about being successful at RPA. And I'll show a slide on that a bit later. So they're the key roles that you need to think about as you grow your team. I'm going to add a few more very quickly. There we go, got them in the end. So I'm just going to say that a lot of the roles key to being successful in intelligent automation are not actually part of the Centre of Excellence team. They're from the wider company. And it's just worth shouting that out. So not all roles are in the RPA team. Basically, you can't be successful at intelligent automation without having a really close partnership with the rest of the business in which you're automating. So executive sponsors are key to get over any blockers you get, to help you collaborate, to help you get the message out, to help encourage people to collaborate with you rather than not wanting to do this. Subject matter experts are the people in your company that really know the business processes well. When you're automating a business process, a subject matter expert from the team that used to work that process almost becomes part of the RPA team on a secondment to help you build and automate that process. Team leads are important. They end up being advocates for you. If you automate something for them, they usually want more. You need them to free up their people to be able to help you to automate. So they're a key success role. They often become the advocates or champions out in your business that spot new things to automate as well, and that's key to success. The IT team. So in some of the books behind me that you can't see, one of the big risks in RPA that's mentioned is IT will end up not wanting to do this. So getting them on board and part of this is really important. What I find is automating something for IT is often kind of early on, is often key to prove to them that this can be done well. You need them to set up the robots environments. You need them to help you with a lot of things that you're going to need in those early days. I've got a frog in my throat. Sorry for the coughing. And the final one is the system owners. Every system that you automate, you need the system owners to agree that you can automate and use their system. You need them to give you username and passwords for the robot. So getting them on board is really key as well. So there's a lot of roles there, a lot to think about. But like I said, it's an evolution to get there. Okay, so final part of this presentation before we go into Q&A is where to find training. And the first place is obvious. So all the RPA vendors have their own training. So obviously, whichever tool you're using, you'll already be familiar with the training courses that they provide on that vendor's website. One thing I'd say with this slide is it is worth trying the other vendor's website, even if you're not using their tool. So, and what I mean by that is some of the other websites have really good content on the wider RPA success, sometimes better than your own vendor's website. So, if, for example, if you're using Microsoft Power Automate, their online training for RPA intelligent automation, I think, is very weak. So obviously you would want to use their training to learn how to use their toolset. But I'd recommend you go maybe to UiPath's Academy to learn more about the wider roles and being successful at RPA. I recommend going to the Blue Prisms University to learn about setting up teams and how to be successful at RPA and robotic operating model. So I would really recommend to visit the different sites to find different training outside the tool itself that's important to success of RPA. And I've done training in Automation Anywhere, UiPath, Blue Prism, and they've all got their strengths. So don't stick to one is probably my main recommendation. The other thing I'd say is the RPA training you get from the vendors on its own usually isn't enough to be successful and to really scale and be good at RPA. You need experience as well. This slide shows the FD Intelligence developer training path that we provide for our customers. It is heavy in using the UiPath core courses and their online training. But what we found then is that doesn't give you enough to just hit the ground running and be a great RPA developer. So what we provide is kind of a layer of best practices over that and an ongoing mentoring for a period of time. So I think that's key to success. I'd equate it to passing your driving test. So when I first passed my driving test, about 3 weeks later, I had a crash. I went straight into the side of a van. Even though I passed my driving test, I didn't really have the experience of the road. And that takes a while to build up. So that's where either a really experienced person that you recruit in or using a third-party service provider to mentor and make sure people are doing the right thing is quite important. And my experience is someone that's really done this before helping you means that your first project is going to be spot on successful and you're going to pass those exams quicker. Okay, and then the last one is, I'm going to flick through these. Business analyst training is usually in the RPA space very much a shadowing type thing. That's how we do it at RPA, and we did it similar at Blue Prism in the past. Usually you'll be in a room with a more experienced RPA business analyst, watching them use their tooling, watching them engage with the business, taking examples of their already built process definition documents. So very much a shadowing type of thing usually for the business analysts. There is also some training for business analysts on the websites of the vendors as well. And the last one is, I think I showed this slide in the last presentation, is being successful is more than just using the RPA tool. And a good example is, automating something that stops working 3 weeks later because something changes, or not being able to automate something because your people keep changing scope, or getting real pushback from the SMEs that don't want to help because you're automating their job. All these things are things you need to think about. So a wider robotic operating model or automation success playbook's important. And that usually is someone from experience coming in and helping you. And that's kind of why that role can be really important, especially if you really want to grow this. What I usually say is having 2 or 3 robots, it's easy. You don't really need to think about a wider operating model. Having 10 or 20 robots, you're starting to spin plates and you need that kind of more holistic view that having some kind of operating model and success architecture can really help you with. So I'm kind of through now, Damien. Okay. Whistle stop. Half an hour, not too bad.
Just on time, just what we were looking for.
Very good.
Thank you very much for that. We do have a Q&A system set up here. So I'd like to thank Denis for that whistle-stop tour, as he put it. Very insightful, lots of information to digest in there. What I'd like to do is ask people to type questions and answers using the Q&A symbol at the top, and then I can pose them on your behalf to Denis, and we can see if he can fill in any gaps that may have been created through that learning process there. So if I can ask for people to fire some questions across, that would be most grateful. So one of the questions that has come in is, I think we asked this last time actually, but we are 7 or 8 months along. Do you see AI overtaking intelligent automation? I know you touched on it, but do you see that being a potential threat in the future?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I've seen some posts on LinkedIn where people have said things like AI is coming, it's the end of RPA, or that kind of thing. I think the reality is very different. I think the reality is the two fit together really well. I actually think AI, from what we're seeing at my company, is opening doors to us to automate more. So I think rather than being the death of AI being the death of intelligent automation, I think actually it's a real expander for it. And I think we're going to see that over the next year or two as people realise exactly everything it can do. A good example is we're automating personal tax for accountancy firms, and it's an automation project, but we would not have been able to do it without ChatGPT and LLMs, or at least a large part of it, and we would not have been able to do it with some of the AI going into document understanding tools at the moment. So it's opened up opportunity for us rather than restricting us. I think that's the way to go. I think in terms of AI taking over the world, I think we're a long way off, and for the medium term at least, it's all positive for this sector.
Fantastic. Okay, getting variants of quite similar questions. One that's come up a few times is the management of the fear factor. So the fear factor around, will RPA, I guess, take away people's jobs? I know we talk quite heavily about it not, but how do we manage that?
I think the first thing is to be honest with your people. If you can say, if there is going to be, an issue, it's best to, the worst thing you can do is to not talk to your people about risk, because they'll perceive the risk anyway, and they'll end up being blockers rather than collaborating with you. So the first thing is to be open with them, I'd say, generally, even though that can be difficult. The reality in the UK at the moment is most of the companies that I'm talking to, and most of our customers at FT Intelligence, their problem isn't, their reason for doing intelligent automation is not to make people redundant. They've got real recruitment issues and retention issues. They've not got enough people, and a lot of them want to expand their business as well. So at least in the UK accountancy and hospitality spaces, redundancy is just not going to happen. I think be honest about it. Hopefully the way around it that I've seen working really well is get people engaged in it and make people feel they're a part of it. You do that through the kind of competition I mentioned before, but also upskilling and training people out in your business can really help as well. And if people see that there's jobs creation in your company in intelligent automation, that kind of softens the blow of maybe some roles not existing anymore. It can be some job creation, some loss. So honesty and get people involved and make it exciting if you can. Have road shows and things like that. That often works.
Transparency, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Another good question here. I think you mentioned the 80-20 divide. What to do, what not to do.
Yes.
Obviously, every business is different. How would someone who's looking at this differentiate what should be automated and what shouldn't really? How have you got any advice on that?
So I'd say I've had some difficult conversations with customers in the last year since I joined FT Intelligence about this 80-20 kind of can't automate everything rule, because we've had some customers where the expectation is, if we're going to automate their business process, we're going to automate it 100%, even if it's a complex business process. And what I've said to them is, we can automate 100%, but I'm going to have to charge you 10 times more, and I still probably won't be able to deliver it, because every tiny scenario, every nuance is often impossible on a more complex process. So what I can do is I can agree with the customer, and it's very much a conversation with the customer around what 80% would be a quick win to automate. What 20-30% would be a quick win to automate, where you actually get 80-90% of the benefit. And so it's very much a collaborative conversation with the customer. And the reason to do that is to go a lot quicker. And it's to train our customers almost in expecting there to be exceptions. So I had a real problem early doors at FT Intelligence, because the customers, as well as expecting 100% automation, they expected no business exceptions, no system exceptions. They were after perfection, and we're not in the perfection game. So the conversations I've had with them have been quite difficult because they weren't set up right to begin with.
Okay.
The way around that is, with a new customer, with a new business unit that you're automating, set the expectation right at the start that there will be system exceptions, and call this robot that you're creating for them a junior assistant or something like that. This is a junior person in your team. Can't do everything, but can help you with that, with most of the boring stuff. And the difference between this robotic junior assistant and a human junior assistant is, a human junior assistant, if they get stuck, they'll, well, virtually these days, but they'll lean over the monitor and they'll ask their colleague, how do I do this? Whereas the junior robot can't do that, can't collaborate in that way. So it's very much a junior role, and hopefully that will get the message across to customers that, these robots will need humans to do some of the exceptions, and it's not going to be 100%. I think that's kind of the thing. So collaboration to get that 80-20 agreed with the client, and set expectations from the start that there will be exceptions are the key things.
Fantastic. Good stuff. Okay. A couple of other ones coming in along the lines of the talk in the press about Power Automate, and how Microsoft and Power Automate may shake things up and approach things differently. Have you any insight on that at all?
Well, yeah. I've been talking to. Obviously, I'm interested. We have intelligence. We it was bound to happen at some point. Bear with me. Postman. Right. Yes. So Power Automate. We're looking into using it more ourselves at FT Intelligence, even though we're a UiPath shop. And I'd say, horses for courses, basically, with some things where it's quite simple. So it makes sense. We had a customer conversation a couple of weeks back, and it was the automation. What they wanted us to automate was to kind of have an online form, put some data in some spreadsheet somewhere, and send some emails somewhere else. And it was all very much linking Microsoft products. It felt like that. It felt like it should be done using Power Automate. However, more complex stuff at the moment, Power Automate's not there. They're only just introduced basic work queue element. Microsoft bought quite a basic automation tool, not one of the top 3 or 4. They are developing it, but not at a quick rate. I'd be surprised if they're not. I'd be surprised if they're not one of the top 2 RPA vendors now already. But in reality, I think from what my senior developers are telling me, for the more basic stuff, especially automating between Microsoft products, definitely look at Power Automate. It'll be cheaper to use. It's often licenses included in Office. More complex automation, my guys reckon it's nowhere near there yet. UiPath are kind of 5-6 years ahead in terms of the more complex stuff.
Fantastic. Okay, another couple of questions along the same lines. I think we had this before, but we'll revisit it. Does automation sit within IT or the business, or both? I know you touched on the fact that sometimes IT don't want to get involved, sometimes the business doesn't want to get involved. In your experience, where does it start? And I guess there's another question in there as well, which is similar. Who would normally lead it and start it then? Where does it start in a business, and who owns it? So
it's the most. I think every time I've done a Q&A session, this question's been asked. It is the most common question. So thanks again to you guys. There's no right answer. So there are risks of both. So usually, an RPA organisation setting up in the business, IT can end up being a blocker, saying no, we should be doing this, or that the reality is it's quite it can be quite difficult to get started doing something very technical in the business. The plus side of doing it in the business is, you know your processes better than IT do. You know your people better than IT do. So it can be quite a shortcut in that sense. So having it start in IT is great because IT's already got the governance, already knows how to run technology projects. They can get quite started quite quickly. The negative of having it in IT can be that in reality, IT is probably already a bottleneck in your organization where they've got a big change list that they're not getting done. Adding in more stuff under RPA, it just makes it even harder to get done. So IT, the reason that RPA exists usually is because IT is not getting around to stuff. So there's pros and cons of each. And what I usually say is the reality is you end up with a bit of both. So what I've seen is the best RPA capabilities that started in the business ended up so technical and so close to IT, you wouldn't know whether they're in the business or not. And the same with the IT, where it works in IT is where they get business analysts and business people really close to them. So I think rather than thinking about which works best, there's pros and cons of each. The end game is this kind of technical team that is you wouldn't recognise as being part of the business or part of IT. That tends to be where it ends up if you do it well.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, look, I mean, that seems to be the end of the questions. There's no more flowing through. So with that in mind, I'd really like to thank you, Denis, for what you've done. And I'd like to highlight that FD Intelligence are only a couple of clicks away from some consultancy, as am I, only a phone call or a couple of clicks away from any hiring needs you may have right across the RPA spectrum. All of those roles that Denis mentioned, I think I've placed most of those roles with Denis over the last 2 years, including himself into FD Intelligence. So I'm very well versed in that format and across the spectrum. And he, as a wider company, is very well versed in all things technical and digital, as well as some other specialisms that may interest you as well. So we are intending to carry these webinars on. We are intending to make them something in the southwest where I am, and maybe in Manchester as well, where Denis is, where they can be in person as well. So once again, I'd like to thank you, Denis, and hope that we can be of service to anyone who's watching in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Take care.